and we had a constant barrage to our aircraft flying over. And so building models and interest in aviation was inbred in me from the very beginning. And of course, we lived in a very exciting time from the 50s through the 60s. And of course, that was the time that NASA really got going and we all went into space. And so it was a very exciting time. I'm going to be giving you some links to look up, some URLs as we talk. I think it's important for us to understand very quickly what makes an airplane fly. So let's go to this first link. And if you go there, you're going to see some information on aerodynamics. We know that what makes an airplane fly is the relative airflow or the relative wind over the chord of the wing. This creates a high pressure on the bottom and a low pressure on the top. Basically, the wing gets sucked into the air. If you want to think of it, it's caused to fly because of a vacuum. The high pressure seeking the low. We know that an aircraft wing can stop flying if that laminar flow no longer exists over the chord of the wing. Now, as we change the angle of attack on a wing, of course, the airflow gets interrupted, and at a certain point, the airflow is going to separate, and that wing is going to no longer fly. And that's what we call in real life a stall. Now, we do stalls every time we come in for a landing. The airplane has to quit flying, otherwise we'd never get back down on the ground. So the stall has nothing to do with the throttle. Certainly we can do stalls with full power or with no power at all. There's basically four forces that act on an aircraft. Of course, drag, thrust, the lift component from the wing, and then gravity. All of those allow us to be able to make an airplane to fly. And certainly we could go into a lot of detail on how an aircraft turns and adverse yaw and a lot of other things. But we'll leave that off for this talk. But I wanted you to have a basic of understanding of what makes an airplane fly, because it's very important when it comes to NASA and NACA and the history of aviation. Wright brothers were very smart and spent a lot of time putting together the first airplane, and they were successful. But it really wasn't too much time after that. In fact, in March 3rd of 1950, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics was formed. And this was really a cutting-edge research group in aeronautics in the United States. It was actually modeled after a British Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, and it was created by Woodrow Wilson. They had a very small amount of money at the time, only $5,000. But the committee's mission was to direct and conduct research and experimentation in aeronautics with a view to practical solutions. NASA, or NACA at the time, was involved in virtually all areas of aeronautics, initially consisting of 12 unpaid members. In its first decade, it counseled the federal government on several aviation-related issues. These included recommendations recommending the inauguration of an airmail service and Weather Bureau, licensing of pilots, aircraft inspections, and basically providing policy recommendations on the nation's aviation system until its incorporation in the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in 1958. From its origins, of course, NACA emphasized research and development. Although the Wright brothers had flown successfully in 1903, by 1915 the United States really was far behind Europe and its aviation capabilities, a situation which many United States advocates, aviation advocates, found galling. Our lack of organization and research, and also in the amount of funds collected to military aviation, were way behind as well, and NACA was developed to help take care of some of those issues. NACA used a lot of scientists and engineers that provided aeronautical research services. And even though they had a very small space, they were able to do a lot of really special things. And with its development of Langley Laboratory in 1925, they had some 100 employees. And a lot of their technical notes and technical reports were presented, and research continued during the 1920s and 1930s, and really NACA became the premier aeronautic research institute. In 1925 they developed the first wind tunnel, which would accommodate a full-size fuselage with an engine. And they were able to do a study between engine cowlings and drag. The result was a low drag streamlined cowling for aircraft engines, which all aircraft manufacturers adopted. So a lot of the airplanes that we see back in that period were all using that cowling to help streamline the aircraft and develop more low drag features so that aircraft could fly faster and get better lift to drag ratios.